Welcome, friends, to another wonderful, hopefully, presentation for World Doll Day, celebrating 5 days of Christmas. I'm Elizabeth Anne Coleman, and perhaps you recognize the Coleman name from publications that go back now more than half a century. And it's a very wonderful pleasure for me to be standing here to talk about some of my favorite little things. And for this presentation, I decided that perhaps it would be fun to look at what children might have asked for their dolls to play with at Christmas time or to receive as a Christmas present. And I think we can take a look over at least a century, because we all know that Christmas as we know it today did not begin until the mid-Victorian years. I have a rather sad beginning here. I have a Santa Claus, a German stockinette-faced doll from the early 1890s, and it's datable because we have a photograph of the little girl who had this Santa Claus. She lived in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and she was born in 1887, and she died in 1891. Now, one can just imagine this little 4-year-old asking Santa Claus for something for her doll. What might it have been? Well, in those times, Pittsburgh was a very sophisticated city, and they had wonderful department stores. But not all Christmas presents come from shops. A lot of them are homemade items. And if she had a French bébé, she might well have asked for a very, very simple garment, which is completely unknown to, I think, most collectors, and would certainly be unknown to a child today. And that is a combing jacket, so that when you combed your hair, loose hairs, dandruff, etc., fell on the jacket and not on your clothes. So that would be something that the family made, an aunt, a mother, a grandmother, and gave a child for Christmas as a garment, like we're used to getting garments. The other item that I've selected from the same vein is a nightcap. Because Victorian women and children at night wore a little cap to cover their hair to keep it in place and neat and tidy. Now, if the child went shopping or asked for something from the store and a catalog, they might well have gotten for their Jumeau doll a muff and tippet. And this is a set, which was sold as a set. And while the fur looks like a little bit of a dead animal, it actually was a very stylish pair of items. And these were relatively expensive, and they were advertised in publications on both sides of the Atlantic. That's the store. Family members could have made little crocheted tippets and muffs. And this is one from a little earlier in the 19th century, probably about 1860, 1865. Now, children on both sides of the Atlantic in the later years of the 19th century recognized the name Jumeau. And they were so well known that their dolls were numbered on the back, and you bought the clothes by the size of your Jumeau. And this is a corset with size 9. Can you see the 9 there? And so this was designed to fit a size 9, or I think it's about a 22-inch Jumeau. And do you know what these are for? These buttons on the side? These were buttons that you buttoned your corset or your doll's corset to their pair of drawers. There were usually button holes on the drawers. And the drawers could either be store-bought or they could be homemade. Now this doll, collar does not have a size stamped on it, but other garments do have sizes stamped on them or other accessories. And it's likely that this, because it came with a Jumeau size 9 doll, this was probably a commercially bought item for the size 9 doll. And we all know that children like accessories for their dolls, and this sort of collar would be a perfect accessory for some child's doll. Now, my own mother had a favorite doll, and the doll's name was Goldie. And during her childhood, she got a letter or a postcard every year from her doll, Goldie, saying that Goldie has gone away and she'll be back on Christmas Day, and that Santa's taking very good care of her, and that she will come back with a new outfit. So these are the cards that Goldie got, and I always think it's fun to know exactly if you write a letter to Santa Claus and tell him what you want for your doll, to get a Christmas card from him saying that he's going to dress you up in the latest. Now, this somehow managed to migrate to there. This is another piece that was commercially available for the Jumeau. It's a little smock, and there's the size 9 again for the Jumeau size 9 doll, and it could have been for any doll that was the same size as the Jumeau size 9. Not always were the garments marked with the size with a stamp. Paper labels were also sewn in frequently, and this is another garment item that would have been absolutely wonderful for a doll to receive at Christmas time. Now, this Jumeau doll also has a pair of gaiters, which were extra leg coverings to wear in the wintertime. This is a pair of woolen gaiters, and these went over the shoes, and the little strap went under the sole of the foot. Then there are the hand-done knitted hose, stockings, whatever we want to call them. There's so many names that it's hard to sometimes keep track of what the right names would be. Now, as we go through, you'll see that practically all of the items are for either children or dolls or adult dolls. This little item would have been for a male doll, and this is the original pocketbook. And guess where it went? It went in the pocket of a garment. And this is where you kept your papers, not necessarily your money, but you kept your papers, your business papers in pocketbooks. And these go back to the 16th century. It's not a new form. Now, for the females, you've got purses, handbags, and here we have a wonderful grouping of handbags from mid-19th century, a chatelaine bag which went around your waist, and the bag itself was suspended from it. And then you had regular handbags. These are both 19th century. Then you have a 20th century drawstring bag, and this has wonderful. I think I put it upside down. This are the drawstrings, and then the little pendant fringe tassel, which is something that's so characteristic of early 20th century bags. Then we have a little crocheted bag and the ubiquitous mesh bag. These bags sometimes were actually used by human adults for keeping change in them. So it's sometimes hard to say what's what. From the 1950s, we have this handbag. Now, what Christmas for a human or a doll would be complete if you didn't have jewelry to go with it? And to have tiaras, I mean, talk about bling for the doll's hair. I think any little girl would be very happy to find these under the Christmas tree for their doll. Now this one has to go upside down because then you really can't see it otherwise. Dolls could also receive cases for their eyeglasses for their doll. In the 20th century, they could receive magnifying glasses and opera glasses for when the doll went to the opera. Of course, dolls went to the opera. That was where you heard music in many instances. Monocles for viewing things at a distance. And then we have fans. Fans are something that run through all the decades, both in the 19th century, even in the 18th century, but for dolls, they come in with a bang in the mid-19th century. And we can compare here our very fine French hand-painted example with a beautiful plastic fan from the 1950s. And a lot of dolls were blessed with Japanese-inspired fans. Now, we also have in front here little cases which have sewing equipment in them. And these, I don't know whether you can see or not, and I don't know whether I can get it out, but the case is so constructed that the scissors, the thimble, the awl, which is the tool that you use to punch holes in fabric, that was very important. The cases are outfitted specifically for the instruments. Something else that a doll could receive at Christmas time would be calling cards with their name and address on them, printed on them. And I think that's a very nice feature. The pieces of furniture that were actually constructed to receive these, you came into the house and you handed either the person who received you into the house, or you left your card on a little table usually. And then your host or hostess picked it up from there. Now, I'm sure that most everybody at one time or another has gotten a gift at Christmas time of a book. And there was books specially printed for dolls. And another thing which is great fun is little photo albums. And I think our photographer might be interested to see who we have here. We have Victoria and Albert and the whole of the British royal family. We know that it's before Albert died because he's included in the album. Another thing that appears over and over again under human-sized Christmas trees are games. And here we have the game of Lotto. And I forget the history of the game of Lotto, but it's played with dice and cards, I believe. Maybe we won't open it. I think that probably is. Now, Santa Claus is often directed exactly what a child wants. And my thought is that this, again, a smock, which children today don't wear, it's a glorified apron. Child asked Santa Claus, Father Christmas, any one of the variety of names, St. Nicholas, what they want for their doll. And I think that the child asked the parent or the grandparent, saying, my doll needs a new smock. Well, they got a new smock, but obviously the person who made this didn't calculate the time it would take to finish it. And so the embroidery on the back is not finished. You think it looks perfect, but it isn't quite. Now we have some jewelry. Again, it's an item that appears over and over the years under Christmas trees. And we have some examples here from the 1950s, two necklaces. This is still in its original packaging. Earrings, various types. Buckles of various sorts for belts, and two watches, which were important. And this one is a very elaborate one on the back side, and this one was suspended from the garment. But the real pièce de résistance here is the Jumeau necklace, which is stamped DJ, I think it's, if I remember correctly. So we have those. Then we have something here, which I think is fascinating. This is a page from Macy's catalog, Winter 1883. And the second, whoops, sorry. Third item down is Jumeau dress dolls, woolen outfits, woolen dresses. And here again, size number of the doll, and then the amount each dress is going to cost. And the largest size one here is going to cost $20.96, which was a whopping sum in 1883. So here's a knitted, crocheted dress for Jumeau doll, wool. And unfortunately, these things are not particularly appreciated by modern collectors, but these were important items. As you can see here, they were so important that they were put above the satin dress. So we know how the merchants were interested in selling these. Of course, this is a winter season catalog, but they considered these important items in the wardrobe, and would have been under the Christmas tree. And this would be another Jumeau dress. Again, it's much simpler than we are expecting our Jumeau dolls to have today in their wardrobes. Be the sort of thing that would be under the Christmas tree. And we all know that one of the favorite gifts, men got the ties, the neckties, and women got the handkerchiefs. And handkerchiefs came in a variety of styles. Some were printed, some were lace-edged, some had lace insertions, and they came oftentimes packaged in groups of 3. Then we have something that we're coming into the 20th century now, and we have things that we're likely to get still today in the 21st century, but you would never have gotten in the 19th century, and that is sweaters. And we have a 1920s sweater, and we have a 1950s sweater. Now, I think one of the most interesting things is the gloves, because frequently the gloves were advertising for a particular store or company. This is a pair that's stamped for a French company, Perrin, and this one is stamped, and it's next to impossible to read, but this is the great store in Chicago, Carson Perry Scott. And I don't know whether, can you see that, Michael?
Just barely.
Barely. I mean, it's very hard to see. And these, for those who are in California, are from Bullock's on Wilshire Boulevard. And
It's one of our best stores.
Yeah, yeah. So we have mittens for cold New England days. We have from the late 19th century, 1880s, 1890s, we have these little gloves, which are probably from the 1930s. We have these nylon gloves from the 1950s, and our 2 long gauntlet gloves, probably from the 1940s, 50s, on those 2. Now, one of my favorite items, as we come into a category which was completely unknown for finding its way under a Christmas tree in the 19th century, are sports items. And for a Mary Hoyer doll in the 1940s and 50s, there were the patterns to knit and crochet sporting outfits, and particularly skiing outfits and skating outfits were her prime thing. But what I love most is the child who said to their family, "I want for Dolly this Christmas a pith helmet." Now, it's wonderful because it's got the green light deflecting fabric underneath. But can you imagine a 7-year-old child saying, "I want a pith helmet"? I don't think this was on every toy shelf.
No, it wasn't.
Again, inventive parents or family members made this up. And it's got a lining in there. It doesn't have a cork lining, but it's otherwise very, very much like a real pith helmet in its construction. We have baseball mitt, we have a golf bag, we have a tennis racket, and we have jump rope, which changes in no way whatsoever from the 19th century one to the mid-20th century one. Now we're getting towards the end here, the poodle skirt. That was a favorite Christmas present for a doll in the 1950s. And another item that would have been sought after for Dolly to carry around with her the year round and might well have been asked for Christmas was a lunch box, and it has an orange inside and it has a thermos bottle. Another cheap item, but a fun item for the doll to have, a camera. Finally, for the doll on the go, we have a backpack, which is late 20th century, early 21st century. But I'm going to end with looking into the future as we all adopt electric vehicles. And we're now encased in our cars with all sorts of devices. When these pair of driving goggles were new, people were basically out in the open in the car, and they had no protection against the dirt and dust and things coming up against them. So let's look into the future and all have a wonderful holiday season. And thank you for listening to me. And the best of wishes for 2022.